Welcome, friends, to another Crystal Clarity author interview. And it's my great joy and privilege to have our guest today, Nayaswami Gyandev, who is one of the pillars at the Expanding Light, the retreat at Ananda Village. And Gyandev helped found the Ananda Yoga Teacher Training program. And right now, with his wife, Nayaswami Diksha, he's the co-director of the Ananda Meditation Teacher Training. He is a fun-loving, warm-hearted, great soul. And Gyandev, it's an absolute joy to be able to share this talk with you today. Welcome.
Thank you, Narayan. It's my pleasure to be here.
And Gyandev, I know that you have a background in math. I believe you studied math for some time. So I have this important thing that I wanted to share with you here. I'm going to share my screen and make sure you can see this. Can you see this, Gyandev?
I can see this.
Take your time to take it in.
Cute. I love it.
It's obvious, a fun joke there, but I wanted to start. You were studying math. How in the world did you get involved in yoga?
um, well, yeah, I have a PhD in mathematics, and it was when I was a couple of years out of graduate school, out in the working world, doing decision analysis, a lot of mathematical modeling. I'd sort of arrived. Like I had everything I wanted. I lived in a great place. I worked with people I respected and enjoyed. The work was interesting. The pay was good. I had a 12-minute commute to work through no traffic whatsoever. And I wasn't happy.
Hmm.
I was like, this isn't supposed to be like this. And I remembered that many years when I was probably the first real thoughtful memory I have of this life was probably 5 years old or 6 years old. And I just looked at my parents and all their friends, and I thought, this isn't going to do it. This is not going to make me happy. Is this all there is? And then I made the near fatal mistake of saying, well, maybe I'll understand when I grow up. Well, after graduate school, a couple of years later, I realized I'd grown up and I still didn't understand. I needed to be something more. And I didn't know what it was. I wasn't interested in God at that time. I checked out of religion as a teenager, but I knew that I was never going to be happy if I didn't pursue what was really possible for a human being. As I say, I had no idea what that would be, but I just remember one night sitting in my living room just saying, I commit my life to this.
Wow.
I had no idea what this was or what it was going to take to get this. But as soon as I made that commitment, and I mean really soon, I started to meet people. I started to run across books. Very soon after that, I came across Autobiography of a Yogi, and I just realized this is it. Much to my astonishment, this is what I've been looking for without knowing what I was looking for. And I've been on the path ever since.
What was that this? And because you spoke of that yearning, making that resolve commitment to find it, what was it when you did find it?
Well, I can encapsulate it in Autobiography of a Yogi, where I'd asked the big questions, is there a God? Why are we here? What's the purpose of my life? The big ones. And I pretty much came to the conclusion, there's no way for me to know. And maybe I'll find out after I die, but that's iffy. Who knows what happens after you die? But when I read Autobiography of a Yogi, I was both immensely relieved and very surprised. I was surprised because I knew that man knew. He knew the answers to those questions. I don't know how I knew it. That was the surprising part. I'd never had a knowledge like that before.
Mm-hmm.
That deep, intuitive, it wasn't even a conviction. It was knowing. I knew in the same way that I knew I exist in some way. I knew that he knew.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I've always been in for a penny, in for a pound sort of person. And I went for it. I've
Wow.
been going for it ever since at varying degrees, varying speeds, depending on how well I'm doing. But that was it. I wanted to know what is real. And within that, I wanted to know what is God, which of course they're one and the same, but they look different. And it's been an interesting journey.
Wow. So that intuitive knowing from reading Autobiography of a Yogi, it sounds like it, well, going back to your background as a math teacher, it was like a proof, so to speak, like Yogananda's joy, it sounds like, or his authenticity, the way that he sort of just emanated that knowing from within, it just sort of struck through all of your rational mind, and it just got to the heart and soul of this is real.
It,
Is that
it was a proof in a way that a mathematical proof could never be, because that's all based on reason. And this was not based on reason at all. It was unreasonable from the logical mind's point of view. But I knew, I just knew. And that, as I said, that surprised me and thrilled me
wow?
that I could know anything at all. And I've been working on that ever since.
And so, what happened from there, Gyandev, in your journey? Did you then?
Well, it wasn't very long after that that I met. I went to a talk by Swami Kriyananda and Ananda's founder, and I was so favorably impressed by how down to earth he was, and yet with the with the tremendous intellect that he clearly had, yet he was entirely down to earth in his approach to the spiritual life. And I realized deep inside, that's what it takes. It's not about the cosmic visions and the fabulous experiences of divine beings or any of that, which will certainly come in its own time. It was about the day-to-day, minute-to-minute application of your intelligence, your willpower, your desire for the highest. That's what it's about. That's what the spiritual path is about. And I could relate to that because I've always been a practical person.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about these visions, and I would love to have visions, but uh, I can't relate to how to get them. This, and it's not, I've learned since, it's not what I should be looking for anyway, but the mind likes those things. But I could relate to the chop wood, carry water kind of spirituality that's not just about being a good person. It's about where you're holding your mind, where you're holding your heart, and how you are bringing those out into everyday life.
So this meeting of Swami Kriyananda, his down to earth and practical application was really attractive to you. It sounds like. Is that where that practical kind of wanting to roll your sleeves up and prove the proof, if you will, is that what drew you into Ananda Yoga, or how did that journey start?
Well, it wasn't too long after that I visited Ananda Village for the first time, and just seeing what was in the eyes of the people, I said, I don't know what it is, but I want it.
Hmm.
That's what I want. And I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area at the time, and I went back. There was an Ananda Center there, and I got involved. And one of the ways to go deeper into the teachings, which I really wanted to do, was to take the Yoga Teacher Training program.
Hmm.
So I did that. I enjoyed it. I had no intention of ever teaching yoga. It wasn't on my screen at all. So when the course ended, I was like, done with that. Until a little bit later, the person who was teaching Ananda Yoga for the Ananda Yoga Center there decided that she wanted to move to Ananda Village. And just by the ebb and flow of people, there was nobody else to teach the courses except for myself. And so I started doing that. That was 1983.
Wow.
And I've been teaching ever since.
So it sounds like there was just that you had that clarity and that commitment very early to want to know, drew you in deeper, and there you were. And then this opportunity sort of through the circumstances of life presents itself, and you fall into it or embrace it, or perhaps I should say. uh,
Yeah, I gave into it because I didn't see it as an opportunity. I saw it as an obligation. So that, these things happen. Man plans, God laughs.
right, right. what what is it about, there's so much yoga, and we know, of course, at Crystal Clarity you've written a book called Spiritual Yoga, which one might think, well, why did you have to name it spiritual yoga? But that's a question that you could take. But another question right now is, what is it about Ananda Yoga that makes it unique from all the other types of yoga?
Well, I don't never like to answer the question that way because it's the potential there to feel like you're putting down other approaches to yoga, which I don't care to do because every approach is going to be right for somebody. Um, but what was right for me about Ananda Yoga was the practicality of it. That it was, my mind likes to see how things work because it's only when I see how they work that I can cooperate with them. I don't want to depend on something magical happening. And, in the end, there really isn't a lot of magical stuff happening. Whatever happens, happen because you're cooperating with it, whether it's at a very low level or about the ultimate level of God's grace. Things don't happen unless you're cooperating with them.
Mm.
And what I realized in Ananda Yoga is that I was seeing this is how to cooperate with the workings of your own, not just your physical body, because that's really just an instrument by which to work with the subtle body, the energy in the body, and with consciousness. And what appealed to me so much about Ananda Yoga is that it was bringing these three levels together. I'd always been a very physical person, very involved in sports all my life. So I needed the physical element, but the physical element wasn't going to do it for me by itself. So what Ananda Yoga got me into is using the body as an entry point for working with the energy within the body, the prana, the life force, and working with consciousness, not just imagining, but literally working with the mechanisms and then going on beyond the mechanisms into the intuitive feeling of it.
Mm.
And that's what always has appealed to me about Ananda Yoga, is that ultimately it's not about what you're doing. It's not about what the body is doing. It's what the experience is.
Mm.
And that experience of Ananda, of joy, or sometimes there's different expressions of the divine, whether it's peace or whether it's a heart opening. Nevertheless, it's something that takes me beyond my everydayness
Mm.
and reminds me experientially there's so much more going on here than you just got to open your eyes to it and understand how to cooperate with
I'm smiling because there's so much more going on. It's like your background. there's,
it.
there's a lot of light going on, but I love how you shared that it's the experience is what was attractive to you. It's the practice is a means to that end.
Yeah, and the philosophy behind it all, which the mind appreciates, but philosophy is not going to get you there.
Mm.
It can't even get you to a not very good place where you become very self-satisfied with philosophy. But that never did it for me. I wanted experience, because if I didn't experience it, it wasn't real to me.
Yeah. And that's it. You kind of answered the other question I had about your book, Spiritual Yoga, why you named it that. It sounds like that was an answer to it right there, wanting to have that
One,
experience.
that's one answer. Yes. The other answer is that for some people, well, yoga has always been spiritual, right? And no, that in more recent years, many people come to think that yoga is asana, and that asana is about perhaps physical exercise or physical therapy or just stress relief, all of which are great. I'm all in favor of them, but there's so much more
Yeah.
to when we use the asana practice as a means to have more of an experience of the spiritual dimension of our own being. So I felt that I needed to make that clear in the title, even though, as I say, for some people that sounds redundant. For a lot of people, that's, oh, really?
Hmm.
Or I've heard that maybe yoga is a spiritual thing, but I've never seen anything about it in my all my yoga classes. So I wanted to make it clear. Here you go. Here's a resource that can help you experience that.
Could you talk a little bit about the the practice of Ananda Yoga or sadhana, that spiritual word for spiritual practice, how it leads us in that direction? That's something that I always admired and love about Ananda Yoga too, but that you're starting with the body, as you said, working with it. And then when I was talking with Nitai a few weeks ago about education for life, and he was talking about, you reminded me of this, the tools of maturity. He talked about the body, our feeling nature, our willpower, and our intelligence. Could you talk a little bit about that and how the actual practice uses those tools?
Well, one thing that's so deeply wired into us as human beings that we don't even notice it, really. Most people don't notice it. Almost no one notices it, but it's central to the practice of spiritual yoga. And that is that whatever the body is doing, it doesn't have to be a yoga posture. It can be just sitting here in front of this computer, or whatever you're doing. What the body is doing is having an effect on the flow of energy within the body, the flow of life force within the body. If you sit up straight, the life force flows more easily. That's why you're more alert. X tends to come up to the brain. If you slump, the life force tends to be clogged in the body. It can't rise like that. And these are, as I say, there's so much a part of us that we don't pay attention to them most of the time. But through the asanas are specific positions of the body that are, you could say, designed to awaken certain movements of energy within the body. And whatever energy is doing in the body, moving here, moving there, moving freely, moving not so freely, has an effect on your state of consciousness.
Mm.
Not that you're necessarily going to some deep, deep state, but it nudges you in a particular way. So the body nudges the energy, which nudges your consciousness. And it's all about consciousness in the end. If we were totally blissfully happy all the time, who would care about the body? Who would care about the energy? But most of us need some less subtle tools than consciousness to move ourselves in the direction of happiness, of joy. That's what everyone wants, after all. So if you're not able to just zap into divine joy, fine. Let's do with the energy what would help to move us in that direction. And if you're not feeling particularly in touch with the energy on that particular day or that particular moment, what can we do with the body, physical body, to move us in that direction? And you start doing that, and all of a sudden, hey, not just the body, but the energy. I feel energy starting to move me in that direction. I feel freer or happier or more loving or calmer, whatever it may be, depending on the asana itself. And then one of the unique quality of Ananda Yoga is It doesn't leave it at the level of just physical bodily positions and movements of energy. It also brings the mind into it. Like, how can these three levels of who we are, body, energy, mind,
Mm-hmm.
all combine, all unite to reinforce one another and to move us toward a higher level of consciousness where we can really experience joy, experience love. And this is what really has grabbed me in the practice. It's not a physically demanding practice necessarily. There are some asanas that are demanding, but that's never the point.
Yeah.
The point is always, even if it's a more demanding asana, the point is to awaken the energy, but not just leave it as awakened energy, but discern how is that energy affecting my consciousness and how can I help that happen to a greater degree.
And so you were talking about the intelligence and merging that with our energy to nudge us in this spiritual uplifted direction. Could you talk a little bit about the affirmations in Ananda Yoga and how Swami Kriyananda, how they came about and how to incorporate it into the
That's,
practice?
that's one of the distinguishing features of Ananda Yoga is that each asana has its own affirmation. Those are given by Swami Kriyananda. The whole system is based on Paramahansa Yogananda's teachings. He did teach asana, by the way, but only to some of his closer male disciples, which is an interesting one. But Swami Kriyananda expanded that and made it into a coherent system. And the idea was, okay, the asanas help the body to feel better. They help to move energy in a particular way, which will affect consciousness a bit. But how can the mind help that along? And that's where he said, okay, I'm going to meditate on each asana and discern the essential direction that it is nudging my consciousness in, and then develop an affirmation that will support and more than support, that will augment the power of that experience so that the experience can be as great as it can possibly be. So he developed these affirmations. They're repeated silently while you're in the asana, and over, the idea being it's not the words of the affirmation. It's never about the words. The words are just of the logical mind. But the words are like a doorway into the intuitive experience of it, into the feeling
Mm.
of the asana, the feeling of the energy movement, the feeling of the affirmation. And ultimately, when we're doing the practice, we want to go beyond focusing on what the body is doing and beyond even focusing on what the energy is doing, and even beyond what the mind is doing in the affirmation, going to the feeling behind it all.
Mm.
Because feeling is really, it's the bottom line of who we are. Not emotional feeling,
Mm-hmm.
but intuitive feeling.
So this is beautiful. The practice, the asanas you have help the physical body awaken the energy, and then the affirmations are helping you tune in to what you're saying, that essential consciousness that the postures are trying to help us to experience. Is that
Exactly. Exactly.
do you have a favorite affirmation right now from Ananda Yoga?
Well, I like them all, quite honestly. But there's one that I'll just share. The first one that ever struck me deeply was for Trikonasana, the triangle pose. Anybody who practices yoga knows about Trikonasana. And the affirmation for that one, here you are over to the side, one arm upraised, your gaze upraised, looking to the sky. It's like you're more than a receptacle. It's like you're a magnet drawing into you divine consciousness. And the affirmation is energy and joy flood my body cells. Joy descends to me. And so getting back to what I was saying a moment ago, you're practicing that asana, you have the body in that position, you've got the energy opening up, you're just repeating the asana, but repeating the affirmation, but behind the words is just opening to joy, joy, joy. And to make it as much a totality of the experience being joy as possible.
This is beautiful. I can see why. I mean, the practice is attractive for you in that way because it it sounds like it rounds out the whole experience. You have the body using the mind, but to tap into your spiritual nature. I know, Gyandev, there you also helped with yoga therapy, and years ago at Crystal Clarity, they're out of print now, but you had books with Dr. Peter, Yoga Therapy for Overcoming Insomnia, Menopause, and Headaches, I believe, right? I think there was three.
I didn't do the menopause one. I'm hardly an expert on menopause. Headaches and insomnia, I had a go at.
Thank you for the clarification. um, I wonder if from your experience and sharing with so many people over the years, are there any success stories from yoga therapy that stand out to you? Just how a yoga posture or learning how to breathe correctly just transform someone's life.
Well, one of the things I learned early on in doing a little bit of, a good amount of yoga therapy, especially working with people with insomnia, but it really spread to any other dimension, whether it's physical, therapeutic, or whatever it may be, is that whatever someone is dealing with, there is a strong mental component to it. And if you ignore that, if you think that just by doing some asana, some physical positions, or even breathing exercises, if you limit it to that, you're not really touching the deeper level where the challenges exist. And this really came home to me when somebody wrote a testimonial for the insomnia book. Well, it was not for the book, but after getting the book and reading it and applying it, she said, I was a single mom with a full-time job, going to college to try to better my place in life. And my fundamental attitude about sleep was, I can't afford to sleep.
Wow.
And she didn't realize how deeply that mindset went into her.
Mm.
And after she was no longer struggling, after she had finished school, after her kids were grown up, she still had insomnia. And she realized that if I address this only on a physical level, it's not working. I need to address the real causative factor that I put there myself. I need to undo it. And so it's what she found the most helpful about the book, frankly, a little bit the breathing exercises, but mostly the affirmations practiced as she was trying to go to sleep, and very soon succeeded in having a healthy sleep pattern. And by very soon, I mean within a couple of weeks. It was like all that had gone away. Now, it doesn't go away for free. She put in effort. But she did it in a remarkably short time. She reversed something that she'd been reinforcing in herself for years, even decades, perhaps.
Yeah.
She reversed it. And that's so satisfying when it isn't just the symptoms that go away, but it's really the causative factor that it gets dealt with.
That must have been very rewarding for you to feel like it helped her get to that deep root cause of the problem.
Yeah, it was. It really was. And, we realized, working with Dr. Peter, who's a physician, a family practice physician, he helped me keep me grounded in one way. in many ways, but in one way in particular, that you see these research studies on, well, yoga therapy for insomnia, for example, and they have the group, experiment group. They're doing an hour or an hour and a half of yoga every day or every other day, something like that, for a certain period of time, and they measure the effects. And both Peter's thought and mine was, somebody who, unless somebody is really into yoga practice, they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
They're not going to be willing to spend that much time. If we say 15 minutes, that is pushing it.
Mm.
So we developed something for 7 minutes, as well as 15 minutes for those who would like to do more. But of the people, at least I'm aware of, who tried it, almost everybody was like the 7-minute person, maybe 8 or 9 minutes. But that was just, otherwise it takes longer than that. I'll just do the pill.
Yeah.
That was sort of the attitude. Because it's not a life-threatening illness, so they think. So it was a very interesting experience working with people, real people. In other words, real people who are not yogis. They're not yoga practitioners. They just want a solution.
Yeah. In that way, Gyandev, the yoga therapy helps with these deep-rooted problems, like you were saying, for this woman, and that's such a prevalent kind of thought out there. I don't have time, or it's never enough with the go culture, especially the frenetic nature of in the West and America can be like that, as we know. How have you seen, because I know you've had this focus in recent years with the online meditation teacher training, how have you seen meditation? So this woman, the affirmations with the yoga postures for insomnia were very helpful. Have you also seen that type of transformation with people with the practice of meditation?
Yes, I have. It's a little less visible because usually they're not dealing with, they say, well, it could have been meditation, it could have been something else, or change my diet or whatever. All these things work together. But more and more, I think we see people who meditation, yes, there's this huge component of the meditation world that's about stress management, and I'm all for it. I'm all for stress management. But what really I find fulfilling, whether it's in teaching meditation or training meditation teachers, is when the light bulb goes on inside of somebody, and you see that they're experiencing something larger inside themselves, not out there, inside themselves. And they're just saying, I never knew. I never realized what this was, that it could even be inside of me. That's what I enjoy seeing. And, for most meditators, they're not there yet because they're not looking there yet. But even if they just practice meditation for stress management, if they practice it, they really practice it, it will do its own number and take them to an experience of some aspect of themselves that is like, wow, I had no idea. That is so wonderful. And the best thing about it, it's me.
Yeah.
It's not something I have to go out and buy or somehow I have to go achieve.
Right.
I just have to uncover what's already there.
That is thrilling for the people that experience it, and for you too, because I imagine you've had that experience yourself from your practice, and enabling someone to have that sort of self facility, that they have this, what did Yogananda say, this portable paradise within. That is really incredibly rewarding, I know, for you.
It is, and it's also very rewarding to see that meditation has gained such common currency that it's no longer something weird, which it was when I started meditating. It was very weird in the eye of the general public. it no longer is. And that means more people are doing it, or they're open to try it. And it's so crucial. This world so desperately needs
Yeah.
people who can touch their own innate peace and realize this is beyond value, and I can help to spread it
Hmm.
because it's so vital now more than ever.
It's desperately needed now. And I know you've also recently, I think you were starting maybe before the pandemic happened, Gyandev, with, you were calling it Take Charge of Your Life. And I know you've done a recent workshop, I think, with Diksha on it. Could you talk to us a little bit about why that's so important right now? I mean, I know it's an obvious question, but uh,
Yeah, this
well, you're
the book was going along fine until COVID hit, and the in-person classes that I was teaching could no longer happen, and we had to pivot to teaching online, and that just chewed up so much more time than that I didn't have time to further the book. Although I think that the fact that my wife Diksha and I have been teaching this course called Take Charge of Your Life is really, it's really been an important thing to be happening in that hiatus until I can go back to the book. Because one of the very beautiful things that Paramahansa Yogananda gave, he wouldn't just give these lofty teachings that you can only hope for or imagine. He was so practical, so down to earth, and along with keeping an eye on the ultimate fulfillment. So he gave, and Swami Kriyananda expanded on a large number of techniques for yoga techniques for working with the life force, working with energy to take charge of your outward life, if you like, but even more of your inner sense of who you are and who you can be. Specific techniques, simple techniques, techniques that you can use, many of them in the space of a single breath. Some of them are more like 3 to 5 minute techniques, some of them longer, but to really begin to get a handle on your life from the inside out, not to sort of just relying on outward practices or environment to help you, although certainly it can and it will. It's important. Environment is hugely important, but how to clean house in your inner environment, and to not just think good thoughts, although ultimately that's really what we want to do, but how to move toward that, how to move toward being in a place of positivity, of positive experience of life. So that's what this book, which its working title is Take Charge of Your Life, is about, is all these energy techniques, simple techniques to really get a handle on your attitudes, your points of view, how you go about accomplishing things. And that's also outward things. It's not just self-transformation, it's getting things done outwardly in this world. We all have to do that. But bringing those techniques together and giving people a real direction. So like when we do the online course, there are 4 units to the course. The first one is how to have and use dynamic energy. Then how to harmonize your emotions. Third one is increasing magnetism, which is a relatively poorly understood phenomenon. That movie, The Secret, doesn't really do it. That there's a lot more going on with magnetism. That's the third unit. And the fourth unit is living in a superconscious flow, which is what we'd all like to do. It's living in superconscious awareness, which flows. It's not something static. It moves, and we want to move with it as if we're just moving with a mighty river. So that's the approach we've been taking in this online course, which is about to end very soon as we're recording this. And I want to reflect that and augment that in this book.
That sounds like it's so pertinent to what the world is going through, Gyandev, especially with what's happened with the pandemic and isolation. And what we're doing here, it's of course an online interview. So if we don't uh, be the cause, I think was one of the ways Swami Kriyananda put it, right? If we don't take that initiative to put out the energy, then we don't want to be a pawn to our environment. And it sounds like this course is going to be really, really, the course and the book when it comes out will be very important for people.
The COVID has really done a number on mental health, and it hasn't done a good number
Yeah.
on mental health. But the good part of that is more and more people who have experienced mental health issues because of COVID are turning to practices like yoga and meditation for an enduring change, not something you cover up with a pill. I'm not against meds, by the way. Meds do have a place in life, just not as big a one as people give them. But to really take charge of their own mental states. And that's a great deal of what we focus on in Take Charge of Your Life.
Is there anything, Gyandev, any question that I didn't ask today that you wished I had asked?
Well, there are a lot of self-help practices out these days. It seems like there's more sprouting all the time. And no doubt many of them are very, very good in some way or another. My inclination has always been, hey, if something's been proven for millennia, um, it has something going for it. It's not a fad. It's not something that is here today, gone tomorrow. It's based on not people who had a good idea, but people who had the ultimate experience of their own being.
Hmm.
And that's yoga. That is, it's not only yoga, but it's yoga. And so that's what I felt so comfortable just diving in totally, because look, this has been around that long. These people have gotten such tremendous benefits of it. And as I said, when I read Autobiography of a Yogi, I know this guy knew,
Yeah.
and he's telling me I can know too. I'm in.
Yeah.
And so I just really encourage anyone, if they're at all drawn to the yogic approach to a better life, really a happier life, then don't wait. Dive in, give it a try, and above all, give meditation a try.
Wow. Thank you, Gyandev. It sounds like this was the perfect closing to our time together. The spiritual proof that has been proved for millennia. Why not give it a try? Thank you. We will. And we'll put links in the YouTube talk here below that people can go to get spiritual yoga. We'll even put links to some of those older yoga therapy books that there's some copies, and if there's any other routines or things like that, we'll put in there as well that you would like, Gyandev. Thank you so much for taking the time to share with us today.
And I'll tell you one more thing very
Please,
quickly.
please.
Um, some years ago, I made a series of 48 Ananda
Oh,
Yoga
thank
classes
you. Yes.
called the Ananda Yoga series. 12 volumes, 4 classes to each unit, and it's totally focused on developing what I call spiritual life skills, which is a little bit of a play on words, skills for the spiritual life and spiritual skills for life. They're very accessible and for anyone really, and we will put links to those under this too, because I feel that's one of my life's work, is to give people these practical tools for making their lives better.
Thank you so much, Gyandev. And it's a great resource. And we will put those in there as well. And many blessings to you. And we look forward to, we'll definitely chat again when we get closer to coming out with Take Charge of Your Life.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for taking the time to chat with me. It was a lovely, lovely time.
Thank you, Gyandev.
God bless you.